I call the honourable member Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I too join with other members in commending this bill to the House. I will speak more generally in this contribution about the changes that we've made to the bill, and we'll save the details for the committee stages when we come to those. I want to acknowledge the previous speaker, Anne Tolley, as one of the other non-lawyers on the Parliamentary Privileges Committee. We were a small club in the room, but attempted throughout to try and ensure that what we were writing was not only legally correct, but also understandable to a range of people. This was a challenge, but we took it up. And I agree with Anne Tolley that all members of the committee contributed strongly to the piece of legislation that is in front of us today. I will make some reference to the comments that Kennedy Graham made towards the end of his speech, because I think they're important, and I'm not sure the difference between what he said and what David Parker said is large, but there are a couple of critical elements which I think are different and are well worthy of debate. And one of those I'll mention now, which is I respect the point that he made about the adversarial nature of this debating chamber in particular, and the way in which politics plays out under our system. I think it's important to note that this bill and this report of the Select Committee is an example where some of the personalities that Dr Graham mentioned actually were able to come together in a way that is, I think, what he would like to see as the ideal operation of our system, that we sat down and we talked through the issues and came up with a solution that was one that we could all agree with. We did that on the basis of the fact that this was a debate about the principles of how we run our system. There is no need, in my mind, for that to be done in an adversarial manner. What we can never do, in my view, is take the politics out of politics. That is actually a debate about ideas, and about different ideas for how to achieve the things that we believe in. I believe we should be respectful when we are doing that, and I will put my hand up from time to time under strong provocation from the Attorney-General that occasionally that perhaps may not be evident when people are in the House watching us. But that is not to undermine our agreement of the importance of the principles of our democracy and our ability to be here. And while I think that might be the other way. I've just got the feeling that's the other way round from the Attorney-General. But this is a serious point. But that when we are debating, and Kennedy Graham mentions the issue of climate change, and it is an issue where I would like to be able to say there is a core set of agreements within this House. But actually, in a question the member himself asked yesterday, there is still a debate about the legitimacy of the scientific evidence around climate change. Now, I find that utterly ridiculous that there would be a member of Parliament who might think that, but they do. And the debate about that will become passionate, it will become strong, but that is part of what we do here. I don't think we should be unnecessarily adversarial, but the debate of ideas and the notion that there is a consensus out there on most things is one that I find challenging by empirical evidence of what I see in the community. But the processes and the systems that we set up to manage that, yes, I think there is a lot of scope for us to find ways that we can work together. This bill is an example of that. And our system is not static. And I think it is very important, Kennedy Graham used the phrase some carpentry on the system. I think that's absolutely valid. And if you look at the New Zealand system, we have constantly done that. You can walk out the back doors through there and see the empty Legislative Council chamber. We can stand in here today and know that there is a multiplicity of parties represented in this Parliament as a result of a fundamental change we made to our system. So of course the Westminster system evolves, and of course the model of it that we practice is unfamiliar to those who sit actually in Westminster because of the changes we have made. So it's not to say that we remain static. What I think is important, certainly to me, and I think my colleague David Parker, is that the core principles of our system have served us well. We must make them the best they can be when they are operationalised. And the point that David Parker was making that is relevant to this bill is around the relationship between the judiciary and this Parliament and the push and pull that we see within that. And that there is something, I think, in the New Zealand psyche that isn't too keen on making hard and fast rules and likes the idea of there being a little bit of give and take and challenge based on a respectful set of principles, and that is what I believe, Mr. Speaker, this bill does today. It provides us with the clearest possible explanation of those principles, and as the explanatory note of it says, the bill seeks to restore and reaffirm understandings of the scope of aspects of parliamentary privilege and to consolidate and modernise existing legislation, and it does do that. And underpinning it is the principle of comity, which is the mutual respect of the legislature and judiciary, which is what I have just been discussing. And I think it's very important that that respect is noted, and we note that it is the core of this bill. The fact is that parliamentary privilege is a vital part of our democracy, and not for us as individual members, a point made by others and also made in the report of the committee. We do that on behalf of Parliament and on behalf of the people that we serve, because otherwise we can't debate issues freely and frankly. And while from time to time there may be members of Parliament who misuse the parliamentary privilege process that we have, that is rare. And the reality is it is incredibly important to us to stand up on behalf of our constituents to be able to use this place knowing that we can speak freely and that we have freedom of speech, that there isn't a sense of coercion or punishment, going back to the history lesson that Anne Tolley gave us before. We need to stand up for those principles. And I and the Labour Party believe that we have done that in this bill. We will ensure, as this passes through, that we make some substantive comments on one or two of the aspects of it where I think it needs explanation. In my remaining time, Mr. Speaker, in this bill, I want to do two things. The first of those is to go back to Lee and Gow, which is the case that started this off, this particular process off. There is no doubt that the business of Parliament is beyond what is necessary for the operation and speaking in this chamber. We all know that in preparing material to come to this House, that is a proceeding of Parliament. That is part of what we do. In another life, Mr. Speaker, I was one of those people who prepared material for ministers to answer questions. That is a proceeding of Parliament. It is very much part of the process, and ministers, in performing their role as part of this parliamentary democracy, need free and frank and fearless advice, and when it is used, need to know that they are using that as part of parliamentary business. So we have righted a wrong here, in my view, in terms of what was decided in Lee and Gow. That is important. It is not disrespectful of the courts. It is merely reasserting the fact that the business of Parliament is larger than the necessity of what takes place in this chamber. It involves the people who work here and the business that's transacted in and around this building. And I'll come back to some details of that in the committee stages. The other point is the one that's been raised already, which is the other case, the Jennings case, around what is effective repetition. I think we have made that very clear in this bill, much clearer than it has been before, and I think both members of Parliament and those outside will be able to see that simply saying that you stand by a statement you made in here is not repeating that statement. It's ridiculous. We're asked every single day by journalists whether we stand by statements, whether we stand by. We cannot avoid that. If a member of Parliament, having exercised their privilege to say something in this House that they know could cause them difficulties, then goes outside of the House and expands on that, well, they will bear the responsibilities of doing so. But what we have done in this bill is ensure that we now have a clear definition of effective repetition and put to bed that case as well. Mr. Speaker, I commend the work of the committee. I particularly appreciate the support we've had from all of the officials. Mary Harris, Deborah Angus, Maipara Poata have been mentioned. I want to particularly mention Ross Carter and John Pike, who gave us excellent advice both on the drafting and content of this bill. This is a very important piece of legislation, and I commend it to the House.
Mr. Speaker,
I call the honourable member Dennis O'Rourke.